Hello, I'm Mark Tucker.
And I'm Alan Furstenberg, and we are Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs.
So,
Hello,
Mark,
Alan.
hey, how's it going?
It's going well. It's been a good day.
Well, yeah, I can imagine why. I mean, this morning, the nominations for a bunch of the Project Voice Awards came out, and I saw your name on it.
Yeah, and you let me know that my name was I had no idea.
No, so it was really awesome. You've been nominated in the category of the Voice Gaming Award for Gaming Voice or AI Developer of the Year. And I got to admit, it's really, really impressive. Looking on this list, we've got some huge names on this list, like Bandai Namco and Zynga and,
Yep.
And Matchbox.io. In fact, you're the only individual developer on this list.
Yeah, it kind of floored me. Yeah, it's just so humbled to be included in a group of very good gaming companies and specifically voice gaming companies. So yeah, I don't know what to say. I'm happy to be there. I'm sure I have no chance at all of competing against them, but I just really love being on that list. That's really nice.
Well, I mean, you've done a bunch of games. You released Snatch Words most recently, but I know you've done some more before then. Why don't you kind of tell people what the games were and a little bit about them, and then let's talk about some of the design and more importantly to us, the development that went into it. The tools that you use, your development process, that sort of stuff.
Okay, so like one of the first games and I guess longest lasting games that I have is called Picture Guesser, and I created that for oh golly, I don't remember exactly which hackathon. I only did a few hackathons at the very beginning, and but this was one of them, and it uses the multimodal, so was created for the very first Echo show. So it's using their display templates.
I was going to say, so this is using the cards and such. It's not even using APL.
Oh yeah, no, APL did not exist at the time. And it's interesting because it's a tile game. So you have a picture covered with tiles. You can use your voice to remove the tiles. And at some point you guess what the picture is. And if you guess correctly, then you get points based on how many tiles were left. And then, so you get started off with a pack of puzzle pictures that are free. And then there's a couple of packs that you can buy after that. So had to do some interesting things to get that one to work with tiles and dynamic server-side generation of an image based on SVG.
I was going to ask how so I guess we could start there. What are the tools that you use? So the card that sends back an image, and that's a JPEG image?
Yeah, JPEG or PNG,
okay,
just, an image, just a static image. And that's really all that was available on display templates was the ability to show images.
Mm-hmm. So what tools did you use to create the graphic, to cover it up?
So there is, trying to think of exactly how I did that. There is an API from another developer actually who's been so gracious all these years to keep this API up and going, but basically it allows you to pass some information and get back an image. And so I think all I have to do is like pass an SVG and then it'll pass back an image. But I could probably redo that, but if I'm going to redo it, I'll probably do it in Web API for games, so I could also do interactive canvas. But back in the time, what I have to do is just go through code. I get an SVG image, and I have to go through and figure out, okay, you've set this tile to remove, so now I need to hide that in the SVG, and then regenerate the static image based on that SVG, and do that all in 7 seconds or less. So that's and so there is no screen interactivity. You can't touch, because what you'd be touching just the whole image. It's like old, like you would do web technology back before any of the other stuff happened. But
it's actually kind of funny, and this is off topic, I realize, but last week I had somebody include me in a thread about games that they wish were still around on the internet from the early internet days, and they included adventure on that list, which was my word game
Yeah.
from decades ago. And I just started pouring out all sorts of technical details about it at the time. And they were just floored, like, wait, you could do that? You needed to do that? I'm like, we didn't have JavaScript. We had nothing. We barely had forms on the web. You know?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so just the hoops we had to jump through to get things done with the technology that we had. So yeah, so I actually, if nothing else, go check out Picture Guesser and see what you could do with display templates by really, using technology, squeezing out every ounce of functionality you could for those basic JSON templates that you got. So that's Picture Guesser, and it's still, it's done, I guess, well enough. It gets regular traffic to it on a weekly basis. Back when they did, I guess, reward points from Amazon, I think there were some months where I maybe earned $100 on it, but that's something better than nothing. So it's been kind of fun, and I get a little trickle of $dozen here or there of I guess in-game purchasing, because it was one of the first games, or one of the first, maybe even the very first one that I did that had in-skill purchasing. So that's it's in need of a redo, but it's still around. It's still hanging in there. So that's one of my games. But recently, so I guess since, go ahead.
Just one final question on that one first. Were you using Jovo then?
No, actually, I think it's Ask SDK, maybe even version 1. It's
It's that old.
Yeah, I'm amazed it's still chugging along with 0 modifications since probably maybe 2019 was the last time I updated it. So that's that game. But during the pandemic, so I worked on 2 different games, Number Spies and Snatchword. Both of those are built with Jovo as the underlying technology. Number Spies has a related flash briefing and is voice only. There are no screens to Number Spies, but there is a companion website that you get to do things like enter in code and having things decode based on the one-time pad. So there's a I guess a companion website, Facebook page, Twitter page for that one.
Now, we've talked a little bit about Number Spies in the past. What I think one of the things that, again, kind of looking at what are the technologies that we're using to implement this, what was the thing that you used to send it out to the various, to populate the various, Facebook and Twitter and, the various components?
Yeah, let's see, I'm trying to think. I think on that case, I actually am using Zapier. Zapier allows to have a trigger based on a webhook. So I could just, inside of my code, post something to a webhook, and that would then trigger the Zapier that would then post. In this case, it's the encoded message stream gets posted to Facebook. And then I think I have another Zapier that then takes when something gets posted to Facebook and posts a link to that on Twitter, because the length is greater than 1 tweet. And so I decided to go ahead and do that in a Facebook post, and then on Twitter point the Facebook post to the tweet to the Facebook post. But so that's that. And that was like one of the first times. So I didn't do anything with, there's nothing like with a leaderboard or specifically with player, but that was the first time I added in a counter that I call the streak counter. No, actually the streak counter I added later. So this one is the recharge counter. So the recharge counter just counts how many times you do something in a certain period of time, and then you have to wait for that time to come back up again. So like if you put it as a 24-hour timer and you get 5 of these things, then you can do a recharge. 5, the first one will come back 24 hours from the time that it was used, and then 10 minutes later you do a second one, so 10 minutes later that will be recharged. And
now this is also a concept that you have in Snatchword. So is this
yes.
Is this a library that you use? How do you do it without revealing all your secrets? How do you do this? I mean, did you code it all yourself, or was there?
Yeah. So some of these components I did myself. So I've got as part of Snatchword, like I said, there's a recharge counter, there's a streak counter where you can just every day do a count, and it will tell you what your count is for your streak, and behind the scenes it keeps track of what the current date is, compared that to a previous date that it saves in your user session. And then if that's a different day, I guess one day in the past, then it increments it, and so then you can just kind of it makes it nice to package that up into just some code to do that. So those are two of the ones I've had it in the back of my mind to go ahead and package those up as an open source, like a game developer pack at some point, and was thinking originally the way that I have it implemented in my code is actually as internal Jovo plugins. So I've created some Jovo plugins that are just included inside my project that does that stuff.
That makes sense.
And so the idea would be to take those and convert them, or I guess publicize them and clean them up. I developed mostly in JavaScript, but starting to work a little bit in TypeScript. I know that that's something that Jovo does quite a bit. And so some of the plugins that I have released for Jovo, I've gone through and redone them as TypeScript and kind of made them a little bit more, I guess, ready for open source consumption. So it's been in the back of my mind to do that with some of these same ones as well. Then like Jovo 4 is coming out, and there are some changes to the plugin. So I'm kind of thinking I'll probably wait around for Jovo 4 to come out before I look at how that is going to work.
There's some interesting stuff coming with Jovo 4. I think we're going to need to talk about this in the future, though, I think.
Yeah, so besides those 2 classes that I've created myself, I've created a badge system. So it's kind of nice where you can have a separate JSON rules file that says this badge, this is the badge, and this is how many points you'll get if you earn the badge. If you can, earn it multiple times or only once, and then just kind of a structure in there where you can use these strings for like is equal to or is greater than or equal to, so that you have some control in this rules file as far as what rules. And so the idea is that you have a list of properties that you add to that you expose in this rules file, like this property, when this property has this value and this property has this value, then then you've earned the badge. And so part of this class is that rules engine plus the thing that goes through and processes it. So anytime that you want to do something that could potentially earn a badge, you actually update, you either increment or set a value on a badge, passing in that property as a string. And so then it keeps track of like, oh, when I do that, then I'm going to go through my rules and find if any rules have that property and see if I'm going to earn that badge. And so one of the things I like about this is that you can, I actually keep track of the last time you've earned the badge. So you can do what I call setting a bookmark. So at some point in time, you can like start the game and say, I'm going to set a bookmark. And then I can earn badges. And at some point in time, I say, give me all the badges I've earned since that bookmark. So that you could be doing things in the game, but then when you ask for what your badges are, or if there's a certain point in your game where you want to talk about what badges you've earned, then you can just easily say, just give me everything that I've earned, since that book.
I was going to say that's interesting, because when we think about commenting on badges in a visual system, we always just want to show all the badges.
Yeah.
But if we're audibly sending them, we don't necessarily want to list all the badges. We just want to say, in the past week, here's what you've earned. Or since the last time you earned the gold star badge. Here are the other badges that you've earned, So we want to be able to do those kinds of things because we're dealing with a different interface. That's a really good point.
Yeah. So once again, I think that those counters and this badges thing would be all things that I would think about having as part of
Mhm.
an open source library.
And it's interesting because I know that you use uh, what was Microsoft's game library? I can't
Oh,
remember the name of it.
Playfab.
Playfab.
Yeah,
I know
and
you
we can
use
talk about that. Yeah.
Right. I know you use Playfab. And I was a little surprised that you didn't say if Playfab had a badge system or not. And
Yeah.
and part of the reason why I was surprised is because I know that the rough equivalent on Google Play Games does have a badge system.
Hmm.
I don't know how good it is. I don't know how it compares to yours. I've never used it, but I know that it's there. And it's one of those things that you can sort of see that a lot of games use or want to make available. So it seems like the sort of thing that being in a common library would make sense.
Yeah, I agree. And so any of these codes that I've got right now are, code that would just run locally as part of your code. It's not, exposed via an API. Part of the reason is so it can be fast. What you'd have to do in order for this to work with voice games is be able to, save the state into your users, session information, and then be able to, bring up the badges system with all that. Right now I've got that so it just plugs right directly into Jovo, but to be able to make this more of a multi-purpose, then it would probably create a separate library for these things and then create a Jovo plugin that uses that, and then would be able to serialize and deserialize the data and do the same thing with like Ask SDK2 or some other of those frameworks out there. So you mentioned Playfab, and that was something that's actually it's pretty easy to use, and there's a free tier with quite a bit of leeway. So if you're getting into a voice game and you want to try something, I would definitely give it a try. What I use it for is for keeping track of players and leaderboards, and so there are various ways that you can log in to Playfab, and there's like an API if you're coming from a client, or if you're coming from from an admin perspective or like a server side. So I take advantage of the client library to go ahead and when the session starts up, check to see if I've got a variable saved to session state, which is in essence the reference to the player ID that's created in Playfab. And so then,
so hang on. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you're using the client library. So you're authenticating as the client for that call.
So yeah, so there are various ways that you can log in. One is like an external or like a custom login, which is then like a server side login. So I'm not doing anything that would be like a login via the mobile or via web where you actually show some sort of a form. I think those things are available, but I'm using the custom login route. So that I can create a user with an external ID, and then I can actually pass in data and store that. It's called user title data. So your title is your game, and it's stored with something for each of the users. And so I actually have this JSON object that has like the Amazon Alexa user ID or the Google ID for the user, and some information like what's their country code, so you can see what flag that show the flag, or what color, what's their avatar. So there's a number of things that I pass to that player object. And so I've actually took some sample code for like leaderboard stuff that Amazon did for their APL. There's like a leaderboard sample. So I took some of that code where it generates the player. So when you go to start the snatch word, then you get a generated player that's like some sort of a adjective and like an animal or an occupation or something, and then some random number, 4-digit number. So I take that and then I create a player inside of Playfab, which is interesting because now I get it tracks analytics as far as how many players there are, how many unique players there are. So by creating that player and having that be the source of truth for the player information, then I get different events. Plus I have the part of Playfab is defined as what they call like a live ops system. So the idea is that you can develop a game, and if you want to add variability and stuff to the game, then live ops gives you this ability to add in code that happens at certain points in time, and that's where you could add in achievements or badges, but there's not necessarily that part baked in, or at least
Interesting.
not that I could see. But so player management, but one of the things that you get is that you get to ban a player. You can ban a player permanently or for X number of days. And so like if you're doing something and you find out that the user is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, then you can just really quickly flip that switch, and when they try to log in the next time, then it throws an error, and then you can handle that error on the voice side and say, you've been banned. If contact the game developer if you've got any issues with that. Or
no, so that's good. So it gives you that management console to go along with it, and and that makes sense. I think that's certainly. I think certainly the world of games understands that that's the sort of thing that you need, and rather than having to reinvent the wheel, using these services that are there already makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. So also with Playfab is this ability. In some ways, it's a content management system, so you can store data at the game level or at the user level. It can be simple data or it can be JSON objects. So you could, in essence, build your game out all in this engine or this gaming platform, and then Playfab lets you get to it. And so it could be running code server side, it could be setting data, getting data. There's just a number of things that you can do.
And we should emphasize that Playfab is designed for games in general. It's not designed for voice games. It's designed for games. So these are concepts that are normal for real-time MMORPGs and so forth. And
yeah, exactly. And so like setting up a leaderboard was super simple. So you can define an attribute and like what I define an attribute for the score, because that's what my leaderboard is going to be based off, is score. So I create a leaderboard for score, and I say that I want it to be like a weekly leaderboard, and I just have to set it up. And so then at different points in time in my voice code, I just make an API call saying, here's the score. I'm going to update what the score is in Playfab. And then later on, I can just do an API call saying, give me the leaderboard. And I can set it up so that it will give me, like the top 5 plus me and the person right before me or something like that. And so I don't have to worry about setting up anything else. I can just say, give me the leaderboard for score, and it will give me the weekly leaderboard.
Does it also keep archives of the leaderboard?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually what I do is, so it rolls over, approximately 5 p.m. on Sunday for me, which is, 0 GMT, Sunday to Monday. And it automatically rolls over. And so then the next time this is also, I wanted to set it up that you're only on the weekly leaderboard if you do something during that week. So it comes out and that there's nobody on the leaderboard. And then the first time somebody plays, then their score gets set and then they're on the leaderboard. And I can go back and get a JSON object. I'm sure I could do it programmatically too. I could make a call and say, give me the last version of the leaderboard, and then do the stuff that, that I'm kind of somewhat manually doing right now to generate the leaderboard for the posting on the Snatchword Twitter feed.
Okay. So what else does Playfab give you that you're taking advantage of, or even that, you have your eye on that you want to take advantage of sometime?
Those are really the main pieces: the user management with its analytics, the weekly leaderboard, and the ability to ban players are what I've used. I haven't really looked at more. I haven't thought of, I guess, what's the next thing? Because what I typically do is like, okay, I want to do this. Is this something that Playfab gives me in this case? Because that's the one I selected. And if it does, then, or I want to work within that that realm, then I do. Otherwise, then I, create something myself, or I try to find some library that already has that built in. So
when I was looking at Playfab, there were a couple of things that jumped out at me as interesting for future thoughts that I want to look at. It's things like it has game lobbies, which was I worked on game lobbies decades ago at this point. So it's nice to see a nice standard implementation of that sort of thing that you can just plug in and use mostly. It's got, expected things like A/B testing. So, you can create your digital objects and release some of them to one group and some to another, and it will pick, who gets which test version. It also interestingly supports in-game currencies. And I have a feeling you and I are going to be talking about transactions and in-game currencies in the near future again.
Yeah, I think so.
So those are some of the other things that jumped out at me as interesting things that it supported directly.
Yeah, and I'm not sure like what you could use, or I guess if you could use the currency, the in-game currency stuff. I guess you might be able to create your own like coins or something that you have. But there are also some statistics like are these not only is what's your monthly active users, but also like which ones are more valuable, like who spent more money in your game and stuff, and which that's important to know to cater and market and stuff
it
to
is.
your.
It is. I understand there is a term for these people in the big gaming industries. They refer to them as whales.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I've heard that in other situations. I've heard them called whales in other industries too, but I'm not big enough to catch a whale at this point.
No, I think the other really interesting thing is that it does have the analytics built into it, so that you can see how players are playing from your console without having to add in a lot of that analytics yourself, which we've discussed before in the past.
Right.
So it was interesting. I haven't done a lot with Google Play Games, but there are some interesting comparisons, obviously. I think the one thing I noticed about Google Play Games is that it has that achievement and badge system kind of cooked into it.
Right.
But it also makes the assumption that you're connecting to it using Google's account system. And if you're not, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
And even if you are, so if you're on the assistant, it seems like that's an attractive thing to do. But you also need to get authorization to have access to it. And that adds another step to logging in on the Google side, which can be a pain. There was another thing that it had that I thought was the other thing that Google Play Games has was also leaderboards. And again, it's the same sort of, how do you want to hook up your leaderboard and give you the power to do it? So,
yeah. And we've talked about, does it make sense to tie yourself more to one platform? Since I've been trying to do cross-platform, I've been able to use that Playfab in one app that's been able to be used for Alexa, Google, and Bixby. And the fact that I'm doing an external login and just have those few connection points, then I really haven't run into any issue. The only thing that's different are what the ID is, and I make sure that I prefix all the user IDs with either Amazon, Bixby, or Google. And so before I had this concept of a player ID, and I could try to find the user in my DynamoDB and then say, oh, this is this Playfab ID, and then search that Playfab ID. But when you create a player, you can also use the player name, so you can look up by player name. But I've now added, like I was saying before, that I pass them information and store that on the Playfab side of things, so I could find a user and easily find what record our ID in DynamoDB to go back and do a query to say, okay, here's all the words that player has and things like that. And I guess conceivably you could store that in Playfab as well. Or they even have a concept that would be similar to EventBridge, or like a pub sub, where you can send information and then where you have code run on the server and execute that at some point in time. So there's a lot more that Playfab can do that I'm taking advantage of, and you can even like run servers that are like running code on other systems, and
Playfab is part of Azure, so that certainly lets you tap into all of the Azure serverless and servered environments, possibilities that are there if that's what you need. If you're
now, interestingly enough, when I first found, because when I very first started voice stuff, I did think of this idea of Snatchword, and I was trying to think about what things could I use, and I came across Playfab. That was before Microsoft bought them. My understanding at the time is that they were running on AWS, so I'm not exactly sure what or how that is today. But yeah, I would think that that they probably have converted over to Azure by this time, but maybe not.
At some point they probably moved over, but no guarantees.
Yeah.
So one of the other things I wanted to know was, what other tools are you using? So for example, I remember that it's posting when someone comes up with a word, it posts that on the Twitter feed.
Right.
So what are you using to do that bridge?
Oh, I think it's called AnyShare. It's an API that you can buy, and what basically you make one call and say, send this message to my social media, and then in the web console for this, then you can connect. This is my Twitter account, this is my Facebook account, this is my and you can connect, and then as part of the API call, you can pass in, like, I want this sent to Twitter, or I want this sent to Twitter and Facebook. So it just makes it really easy that you can, do one. It's like one of those afternoon things that I wanted to add it in, and I started looking at, okay, what API calls would I need to make to do that? And I was at that time I was thinking about doing both Twitter and Facebook. Right now I just ended up doing Twitter, but so it just made it really easy to plug it in and do it. Yeah, there is a cost to that if you go over a certain number of calls a month. So that's something to watch out for. So that is something I am paying for, but not paying for Playfab yet. And I also have Dashbot, and I have Sentry plugged in. So like when exception handling, exceptions happen. And so there's just a number of other API calls. I could actually look to see if there's anything else, but those are the main ones.
And most of those are the sort of stuff that we do for any skill or action or capsule that we're working on. It's more. I'm trying to think. What are the other tools that we have for building game ones? Game development is hot right now. Yeah. Actually, that is one of the questions. Snatchword has a lot of both audio assets and video assets to it. Where did you come up with those, or how'd you create those?
So all the assets are stored in an S3 bucket. So that's where things get served up from. I don't remember exactly where, just various like free sounds, or I don't remember. There's a number of different sites. I would just kind of go through and cull through from time to time, and trying to come up with different sound effects. And some of them I took a couple of ones and shortened them up, used Audacity to go ahead and mix a couple of sounds together, or I guess more technically append one sound to the end of the other sound, right? Nothing really advanced, something that you could do. Just used Audacity to record my help file. So when you ask for help, then it's me, giving a little help there. That was also Audacity. As far as the assets, so I did APL and just took a basic template. There's not really all that many templates of APL in there. And I think that was about the time that APL Ninja was in beta. So I played around with that, and actually if you look on APL Ninja, there's a little bouncing box that I did that I was trying to figure out, and there's some tools that you can use to take like CSS animation and convert it into an APL animation. So I kind of found that, and some people pointed me towards different things with that, and I was still having some issue. I couldn't quite figure how to repeat without making it jaggedy and stuff, and so that was nice because I could send a link from my APL Ninja to Alexander, and he could help me out, give me some tips. So I got the bouncing box working, and then I bought some graphic. I can't remember. I have to look at. I just found the robot icon SVGs, and so I bought that and placed that in there.
I noticed, by the way, that you posted on APL Ninja the high score table.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that now anybody can learn from.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of I think a lot of that came from the sample that Amazon did for. There's a leaderboard example that plugs into. They have their own, I guess, game. Is it Game On? I think they've got their own system. That's kind of like Playfab, and I actually tried to use that, and there were some issues I was having with that, and it was kind of weird to do like weekly boards, I think, and so it was kind of it got to a point where it seemed like it was more work to do that. And so then I said, well, I wonder what Playfab looks like for that. And they were so much easier. I'm just like, okay, I'm just doing Playfab. That's so, but yeah, there's lots of that, if you think about it, that Amazon could do to make some customizations on libraries and things that would make it so easy to do that. And they're not. And I'm certain it sounds like the same thing for Google.
Right. It confuses me. I mean, Google has a well-established library and set of APIs with the Google Play API, and those were originally to cater to the Android market, but they're broader than that. And Google certainly makes a big play frequently for game developers to be using their tools. I mean, just a few days ago, they released a new survey of what are the top. Just bunches of stats like, people are playing these sorts of games up 200% this year. And family games are one of the top 10 types of games that are being played. And that was announced a couple of days ago. And there was nothing terribly surprising in it. But they used that as a pitch for, and here's how we can help you do these sorts of things.
All right, this would be the time that you would typically do a rant, but I'm going to do my own rant. So I've been recently.
Feel free. I don't like dominating these rants. So
I've been doing in-game purchasing with Google, and so you have to put some information in your Action Console, and then you have to go and set up some things in your Google Play Console, and then you have to get some verification and wait, and then go back and do something else over here, and the screens are so complicated, and you have to go to this section and this section and drill down and then add that site to here. And then I'm still not connected with everything that I need to do so that I can even get the get the two products that I created in my APK that I had to create to upload to that not even a release, but I have to pseudo release that. It's just, and I'm like, this is just the developer side of things, and then I'm not even sure how the user experience goes, and like if they can do the whole thing and the whole flow inside the game, or if they get kicked out and how much they have to do on the phone, and what happens if it's a Google Hub. Using interactive canvas, I don't know, but this is just like too painful.
Yep, it's a lot of good questions, and it's really painful. And at some point, we'll have to talk about transactions and in skill purchases and so forth. I'm not sure quite how much ranting we'll have during that, but
but man, not
Yeah.
that it's easy peasy flow for Amazon either. There's enough complexity in there that it kind of slows you down a little bit. But man, there's room for improvement on the Google side.
That's a really generous way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, definitely. I think there's, and that's the sort of thing that Google's been promising now for several months is, and they've publicly promising for several months. And we'll see where that goes,
All right. Well,
So speaking of where
can't
things
come
go,
fast enough.
yeah. Speaking of where things go, you're working on another game?
No, I'm not right now. So like on my list of things to do, there are some improvements that I want to make to Snatchword, some additional intents that I want to cover. I'm still kind of stymied in my release for Bixby. Roger Kibbe's been so nice to offer to help, and I just have been so slammed that I haven't been able to do much on that side of things. But it would be nice to really, fulfill the dream of having one, game, multiple platforms, playing against everybody else in real time. Just really love to add Bixby to that. Plus, I want to add some things so that you can, get your game information via a routine, so that you could just plug it in and say, good morning, or whatever your routine is, and it could say, and in Snatchword, your points are blah blah blah, and you are ranked such and such. That would be nice just to be able to plug that in, and have a routine for that. Something else I'm thinking about for Snatchword is the ability, you can say, find a word, and it will tell you if somebody else owns it. What I would love to be able to do would then, and also you can say, what are my expired words? And it will tell you which words are about to expire or have expired. But it would be nice to be able to say, like, find Apple, and then it's like Apple is owned by blah blah samurai, and you can say what is their expiring words. So then you can find other people and find what their expiring words are, and you can start to then say, they haven't been, here's a word that's expired that the librarian hasn't collected that I can go ahead and snatch. So now not only am I getting points, I'm taking points away from somebody else, and now there can be a little bit more fluctuation.
Make this really more of the battle that you're.
Yeah. So that's something that I'm thinking about for that. And then just thinking about the whole rewrite of Picture Guesser.
That would be fun. I can see that being a really fun game.
Yeah.
To use on a full smart display with, edge to edge images and lots of effects that you can do with web API for games and interactive canvas.
Yeah, and so some of the playing that I did a couple of weeks ago, where I had a Jovo app that was calling into web API for games. That's kind of like the early playground for, okay, now let's see if I can add in interactive canvas, and then I can start thinking about using that as a base for a revamp of Picture Guesser.
Well, it sounds fun. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to finding out how you as always, use some of the technologies that we're talking about with building them.
And I'm excited about getting these things out as open source. I don't know. I sometimes I debate about it, and there's a part of me that's like, well, I put out all this hard work, and this is valuable to people, and I could sell that on Gumroad, and I don't know. There's a part of me that wants to do that, but there's a part of me more that just wants to get this out and people using it and push the industry. So probably we'll do it as open source, some of these main classes, and then do at least initially a plugin for Jovo, probably Jovo 4, and then take a look at how I could write some samples that would plug into API for game. I mean, to Ask Us Decay, sorry, and then kind of see where it goes, because that's I don't know. I like seeing people use stuff, and if we could have a plugin for Jovo for Playfab, which I already do internally. I just have a lot of cleaning up to do on it. But then somebody could install the plugin, create an account on Playfab, set up a leaderboard, set a couple of config values, and then they would have a system that's very similar to Snatchword on getting their system up and going. Yeah.
I think one of the big things is that, the big players on the list that, you're up for an award against, they've all got their internal systems that are doing it, and they're internally supporting each other. And, I think smaller developers, we're still trying to develop all of those things.
Yeah.
And I think tools like Playfab get us a little closer. That's, one chunk of thing that we don't need to develop. And I think, the open source world from you, and hopefully with contributions from others, will help independent developers take the next step to make good games and take care of all of the other stuff that you need to do when you're thinking about a game.
Yeah, there's a lot, but this has been fun to incrementally solve some different problems. Like the badges thing was kind of something that's fun, and I wanted to make it extensible. I kind of was thinking about like unit testing frameworks like Mocha, where you can have different conditionals and things, and I was like, that's kind of what I want. I didn't end up doing the full domain specific language for it, but that's kind of the flavor I wanted to get, and I'm happy with the kind of the compromised solution that I've got. And but would love to get it out there and other people playing around with it and seeing how it could evolve.
So, if you're someone who is working on a game, want to work on a game, feel like you have this idea for a game and don't know where to begin, there are tools out there. Reach out to us. We can probably point you at some of them, or, help get you started. And we'd love to hear what questions you have and see what you produce.
Yeah, I would love to. And if you're interested in joining on to an open source project that are going to be game libraries and tools, think they can be general purpose, but there could be some very voice specific stuff, then let me know. Maybe I could pass off some of the things that I've already got that aren't quite ready for the open source yet. And if you want to work on it together, then I'd love to work on it with other people as well. And
as always, if you've got questions, reach out to us, and maybe we'll talk about them another time on Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Take care, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Have a good week, Mark.
Yeah, you too, Alan. Thank you.